On an early October morning, I sit on the veranda of my Palm Beach Gardens home and watch the rising sun color the sky in shades of pink and orange. In my 76 years, I have learned to appreciate these moments of peace and quiet. The coffee in my cup has long since gone cold, but I don't feel like getting up. Next to me lies the envelope that was delivered yesterday, an invitation to my son Noah's 50th birthday party. It's the third day I've looked at it and can't decide whether or not to accept the invitation. My name is Hampton Blake. I've spent my entire life as a corporate lawyer, protecting the interests of large companies and making money that I thought at the time would provide my family with a happy life. Now that I'm retired, that money allows me to live in a comfortable home in an upscale neighborhood. But it can't fill the void left by the death of my wife, Lydia, 3 years ago. 35 years we lived together, and for all those years she was the only person who accepted me for who I am. Lydia always said that underneath my hard shell was a soft heart, but I rarely let anyone, not even my own son, see that side of my personality. Maybe that's why Noah and I never got to be truly close. Since Lydia's passing, I've been living alone. My days are much the same. A morning walk in the park, reading the newspaper, a game of chess with my neighbor Richard, and sometimes a visit to the local retirement club. This measured existence is broken only by occasional calls from Noah, who lives 40 minutes away, but visits me no more than once every 2 or 3 months. I sigh, pick up the envelope, and reread the invitation one more time. Dear Dad, you are invited to my 50th birthday party on Saturday, October 20th at 17 o'clock at the Laurel Leaf restaurant. Love, Noah and Maybelle. Handwritten note. Daddy, we really wish you would come. Noah. I chuckle. I'm sure that handwritten note was Maybelle's idea. She always makes sure everything looks right, even if underneath that rightness is falseness. Maybelle. At the thought of her, I feel a wave of irritation rising inside. I've been against this marriage from the beginning. When Noah brought her to meet us 20 years ago, I sensed something wrong right away. She was too perfect, too polite, too caring. Behind her flawless smile and attentive gaze, I saw calculation and coldness. But Noah was charmed like a boy. He didn't notice anything suspicious about the fact that she changed jobs so often, moved from town to town, had almost no friends, and never talked about her family. Mom, Dad, Noah said then, looking at us with happy eyes, meet Maybelle Prout. We've been dating for 6 months now, and I want you to get to know her. It's a pleasure to meet you, Mr. and Mrs. Blake, she said with a smile that didn't seem to affect her eyes. Noah has told me so much about you. Lydia received the girl warmly then, but after she left, we had a long argument. She seems nice, said Lydia, and Noah is so happy with her. Isn't that the main thing? There's something wrong with her, I insisted. Sunrum, didn't you notice how she was evasive when we asked about her family? And that thing about working in 3 different cities in 2 years. Something's not adding up here. Hampton, Lydia sighed, you're too suspicious. Not all people have perfect backgrounds and strong families like you. Perhaps the girl has had difficulties that she is not yet ready to talk about. That night we never came to an agreement, and a year later Noah and Maybelle were married. The wedding was modest, with only 2 people present on the bride's side, an older woman whom Maybelle introduced as her aunt, and a young man, supposedly a cousin. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but for Lydia and Noah's sake, I tried to keep my suspicions to myself. As the years went by, my fears persisted. Maybelle was always impeccably polite to me, but behind that politeness I could feel a wall. She never showed her true emotions, never argued, even when I deliberately provoked her with barbed remarks. Lydia often reproached me for this. For God's sake, Hampton, she said, stop tormenting the poor girl. Noah loves her. They have a good family. What more do you want? But I could see that their marriage wasn't as perfect as it seemed at first glance. Noah, always so open and cheerful, became more withdrawn and tense over time. Maybelle often went away on business trips, sometimes for a week or 2, leaving him alone. And each time she returned, he seemed even more depressed. When Lydia fell ill, Maybelle showed an unexpected side. She regularly visited her mother-in-law in the hospital, brought her favorite flowers and books, sat by her side for hours, holding her hand and telling her the news. In those days, I almost believed I had been wrong about her all those years ago. Almost. After the funeral, when everyone had dispersed and Noah and I were alone in the empty house, I saw my son cry for the first time since he turned 14. "Dad," he said, wiping away his tears, "I don't know how to go on with my life. Mom was the one who held us all together. Without her, I found no words of comfort. All I could do was hug my son, feeling his shoulders shudder with sobs. In that moment, I swore to myself that I would try to mend our relationship, that I would be more open and understanding. But old habits are not so easy to change. After Lydia's death, our meetings with Noah and Maybelle became even more infrequent and strained. Without my wife's peacemaking influence, I often couldn't contain myself and said things I'd previously preferred to keep quiet. Maybelle was still as calm as ever, but I could see the resentment brewing in her eyes. Noah was always between us, trying to smooth things over, but it was getting harder each time. Our last meeting was about 6 months ago. They'd invited me to lunch, and things had been relatively peaceful until Maybelle had announced that she was going away on business again, this time for 10 days. "Where was she going this time?" I asked, not hiding the sarcasm in my voice. "Atlanta," she said, not looking up from her plate. "The company is opening a new branch there, and I need to help with the organizational issues." "It's amazing how often your company needs you in other cities," I said, "especially since you're not even in a management position." "Dad," Noah interjected, "please don't start." "It's okay, honey," Maybelle said softly, putting her hand on her husband's shoulder. "Your father is just worried about you. That's normal." Her condescending tone pissed me off. "Son, don't pretend to understand my feeling," I said sharply. "You've never taken care of Noah the way he deserves. All these years you've kept him at a distance, never letting him really get to know you." Maybelle's face contorted for a moment, and I saw something akin to fear in her eyes, but she quickly pulled herself together. "I think we'd better finish this conversation," she said calmly. "Should he? Noah, please show your father out. He has to go home." I didn't see or speak to them after that incident until I received the invitation to the anniversary party. A lot had changed in that time. Something happened that changed my relationship with Maybelle forever and forced me to make a decision that would probably ruin my son's life. 2 months ago, I was in Jacksonville visiting my old friend Henry Coleman, whom we had gone to law school together. Coming back from the restaurant where we had lunch, I saw a woman across the street who looked remarkably like Maybelle. She was walking arm in arm with a tall man, and they were talking animatedly about something. I wouldn't have paid much attention to it. Not many people look alike in the world, if it hadn't been for one detail. Around her neck was tied the same silk scarf with the unique pattern I'd given Mabel last Christmas. I stopped short, disbelieving my eyes. Henry looked at me worriedly. "Hampton, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I'm sorry," I mumbled, keeping my eyes on the couple across the street. "I need to check on something." Without waiting for an answer, I crossed the street and followed them, trying to keep my distance. They turned a corner and entered a small cafe. Through the window, I saw the man kiss the woman tenderly before they sat down at a table. And then she turned in profile, and there was no doubt in my mind, it was Maybelle. In that moment, I was overwhelmed with anger. I wanted to storm into the cafe and make a scene, but my years as a lawyer had taught me to control my emotions and act with calculation. Instead, I took some pictures on my phone and wrote down the address of the cafe. Back at Henry's, I apologized for my strange behavior and asked him to help me find a good private investigator in Jacksonville. "May I ask why you're doing this?" he asked anxiously. "It's about my family," I answered succinctly. "And please don't say a word about it to anyone." Henry knew me well enough not to ask too many questions. The next day, I met with the detective he recommended, a quiet, unremarkable man named Keith Andrews. I told him everything I knew, showed him the photos, and asked him to do a thorough investigation. 3 weeks later, Keith sent me a detailed report that confirmed my worst fears. Maybelle was indeed leading a double life. She was known in Jacksonville as Megan Hope, married to Branton Hope, owner of a small construction company. They had a daughter, Carrie, who was 14 years old. They lived in a comfortable house in the suburbs, and neighbors described them as a normal, friendly family. Maybelle, or Megan, worked as an accountant for her husband's company and was an active member of the PTA at the school their daughter attended. The detective also discovered that Maybelle regularly spent 1 to 2 weeks with this family each month. the exact periods when she told Noah she was going away on business trips. She had been living this double life for over a decade, masterfully balancing two families, two homes, two identities. After receiving the report, I sat for a long time, unable to believe what I had read. My suspicions were not just well-founded. The reality surpassed the darkest assumptions. Maybelle wasn't just deceiving my son. She had built an entire parallel life that he didn't even realize he had. For days, I struggled with myself, not knowing what to do. Telling Noah the truth meant giving him a terrible blow from which he might never recover. But to remain silent was to be an accessory to this monstrous deception. In the end, I decided to wait. Noah had always been impulsive, and I was afraid he might do something rash if he learned the truth at the wrong moment. I wanted to pick the right time and place to minimize the damage. But now, looking at the invitation, I realize that perhaps that moment has come. I get up from my chair, walk into the house, and dial Noah's number. After a few beeps, I hear his voice. "Dad, did you get our invitation?" "Yes, I did. Thanks for inviting us." "So you're coming?" I hear hope in his voice, and it makes my heart squeeze. "Of course I'm coming. It's not every day your only son turns 50. "That's great." He sounds genuinely excited. "I'll pick you up at 16:30, okay?" "No need, I'll come myself. You'll be busy getting ready." "Whatever you say. I'll see you Saturday then." "See you then, son." Hanging up the phone, I sit down at my desk and open the drawer where I keep the detective's report and the photographs. I have a final decision to make. Tell Noah the truth on his anniversary or continue to keep this devastating secret. Either way, I know our lives will never be the same again. Saturday morning greeted me with a headache and a sense of anxiety. Noah's anniversary was hours away, and I still hadn't made a final decision. I had reread the detective's report the day before, looked at the photos, and my anger flared up with renewed vigor. How could she do this to my son? To live a double life all these years, to give the appearance of marital well-being while having another husband and daughter? That thought kept me up all night. I showered, shaved, and stood in front of the closet for a long time, deciding what to wear. In the end, I chose the dark blue suit Lydia had given me for my 70th birthday. "You look younger in it," she said then, adjusting my tie. I smiled, remembering her words. Lydia always knew how to cheer me up. After breakfast, I decided to go for a walk. I needed to clear my head and think. The weather was beautiful, warm, but not hot, with a light breeze that was typical of Florida this time of year. I walked down the familiar streets of Palm Beach Gardens, nodding to my neighbors and reflecting on the past. When Noah was born, I was 26. I was just starting my career at a law firm and was working 16 hours a day trying to impress the partners. Lydia was practically single-handedly taking care of the baby. I missed his first steps, his first words, his first day of school, all the important moments that make fatherhood special. By the time I finally realized that career shouldn't trump family, Noah was already a teenager, with his own personality and views on life that often didn't match mine. Our conflicts were becoming more frequent and more acute. "Why can't you just support me?" he yelled after another argument about his future. "Why do you always need to control my life?" "I want the best for you," I replied. "I don't want you to repeat my mistakes." "Your mistakes?" He looked at me puzzled. "What are you talking about? You have a successful career, a big house, the respect of your colleagues. If those are mistakes, I don't mind repeating them." "You don't understand," I said. "It's all worthless if you can't share it with your loved ones. And I missed out on so much time I could have spent with you and your mother." He wouldn't listen. At 18, he left to attend college in another state and only came home for vacations. After graduation, he got a job at an advertising agency and moved into a small apartment near us. But our relationship remained strained. And then Maybelle came along and things got even more complicated. I was against this marriage from the beginning, and I didn't hide my attitude. Noah accused me of being biased, said I never gave her a chance. Maybe he was right. Maybe if I had been more open, more understanding, I would have spotted the signs of her deception earlier and been able to prevent the disaster that inevitably awaited my son. Immersed in these thoughts, I didn't notice when I reached the Central Park where retirees gathered on weekends to play chess and discuss the news. At one of the tables, I saw my neighbor and longtime friend Richard Stanley. "Hampton," he called out to me, waving his hand. "Join us!" I walked over to him. Richard was one of the few people with whom I could be frank. We had met shortly after I moved to Palm Beach Gardens, and since then we had regularly played chess and discussed everything from politics to personal problems. "You look tense," Richard remarked as I sat down across from him. "Is something wrong?" "Today is Noah's anniversary," I answered. 50 years. "Oh, I see. It's a big deal. And you're worried, as usual, that it's going to go wrong." "Not only that," I paused, wondering if I should share my suspicions and discoveries. I decided to keep it to half-truths. "It's just that Noah and I haven't been getting along very well lately. And Maybelle. You know how I feel about her." Richard nodded. He was one of the few people I'd told about my distrust of my sister-in-law. "You know, Hampton," he said, looking thoughtfully at the chessboard, "I think it's time you let go of the past. Noah's a grown man. He's got his own life, his own decisions to make. Even if you think he's making a mistake, it's his right to make his own mistakes." "What if that mistake ruins his life?" I asked. "Then you'll be there to support him," Richard answered simply. "That's what fatherhood is all about. Not controlling and directing, but being there when you're needed." His words made me think. Maybe he was right. Maybe it really was time for me to let go of the past and try to have a relationship with my son, even if it meant accepting his choices, which I thought were wrong. "Maybe you're right," I finally said. "Today I'm going to try to be more open." "That's the right attitude," Richard smiled. "And by the way, checkmate in 3 moves." I looked at the board and grinned. He was right about that too. After the chess game, I went home and started getting ready for the evening. I pulled out the gift I'd bought for Noah, the antique cufflinks that had belonged to my father. Noah had always liked those cufflinks. He often asked about them when he was little. I hoped that this gift would be a symbol to him of generational continuity, a connection I had so often ignored. As I wrapped the gift, my thoughts went back to Maybelle and what I had learned about her. I remembered that chance encounter in Jacksonville that had changed everything. I'd come to visit Henry for 3 days. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and he insisted I stay with him. His house was in a quiet suburb near the center of town. The first day we just reminisced about our college years, discussed mutual acquaintances, and shared news. On the second day, Henry suggested we have lunch at a new restaurant that had recently opened downtown. "They say it's got great food," he said, "and a good wine list." It turned out to be a great restaurant. We stayed longer than we'd planned and left at dusk. The streets were filled with people coming home from work or out for an evening stroll. We were walking slowly toward Henry's car when I saw her. At first, I couldn't believe my eyes. A woman who looked so much like Maybelle was walking arm in arm with a tall man who looked to be about her age. They were talking animatedly, and the woman was laughing in a way I'd never seen my sister-in-law laugh before. Casually, heartily. "The Hamptons?" Henry's voice brought me back to reality. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, it's just, I thought I saw someone I knew," I answered, not taking my eyes off the couple. They turned the corner, and I followed them quickly, apologizing to Henry. They entered a small cafe on the corner of the street. Through the window, I saw the man kiss the woman tenderly before they sat down at a table. That's when I noticed the scarf, the same uniquely patterned silk scarf I'd given Maybelle last Christmas. I'd picked it out at a little store in Palm Beach Gardens, attracted by the unusual design, deep shades of blue and green with gold flecks forming a pattern that looked like a starry sky. The seller told me it was handmade and there are only 5 such scarves in the world. I bought it, despite the high price, hoping that this gift would melt the ice between Maybelle and me. When she opened the box, a look of surprise flashed across her face, followed by the usual polite smile. "Thank you, Hampton. This is very unusual," she said, carefully folding the scarf back into the box. I'd never seen her wear it since. And now it was around the neck of a woman who looked exactly like Maybelle and was making out with a stranger in a coffee shop in Jacksonville. I stood frozen, unable to move. My brain refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. It couldn't be Maybelle. She had to be at home, with Noah, or on a business trip to Boston, like she'd told him. But it was her. When she turned in profile, I had no doubt. The same delicate features, the same blonde hair gathered into a neat bun, the same gesture with which she fixed a strand that had fallen out of her hair. I don't remember walking back to Henry, who was waiting for me on the corner, looking around anxiously. I mumbled something about a sudden ailment, and he drove me back to his house. I didn't sleep a wink that night. All sorts of thoughts swirled in my head. Could Maybelle have a twin sister she had never told me about? But then why was this woman wearing the scarf I'd given Maybelle? Maybe it was just a coincidence, and the woman in the cafe really did look a lot like my sister-in-law, and the scarf was the same, but not the same. But I knew the chances of that were slim to none. The next morning, when Henry left for work, I took his car and drove to that cafe. It was closed. It didn't open until the afternoon, but there was a notice on the door looking for waiters with a contact number. I wrote down the number and, sitting in the car, dialed it. "Johnny's Cafe, how can I help you?" A woman's voice answered. "Good afternoon," I said, trying to sound confident. "I'd like to make a reservation for tonight." "Sure, for what time and for how many people?" 19 o'clock, for two. And if possible, the same table where my friends were sitting last night. A man and a woman, she's blonde, wearing a blue scarf with gold stars. "Oh, you mean Branton and Megan?" the girl asked. "They're our regulars. They come every Thursday." "Yes, that's them." Her heart beat faster. "Megan was very complimentary about your cafe, so I thought I'd bring my wife." "That's nice of her." I could hear a smile in her voice. "Megan is a wonderful woman, and she and Branton make such a handsome couple. You know, they celebrate every anniversary of their wedding at our house. Next month will be 15 years. Can you believe it? I felt the ground go from under my feet. 15 years. But Mabel and Noah had been married for 20 years. That meant, "Sir, are you still here?" The girl's voice brought me back to reality. Yeah, sorry. Table for 7 for 2. Thank you very much." I hung up the phone and sat in the car for a long time, trying to make sense of what I just learned. Maybelle, who'd been married to my son for 20 years, had somehow managed to be married to this Branton too, for almost 15 years. It seemed impossible, unbelievable, but everything pointed that way. I decided I needed proof, more proof than a chance encounter on the street and a conversation with a waitress. So I called Henry and asked him to help me find a private investigator. He didn't ask too many questions, for which I was grateful. The next day I met with the detective Henry had recommended. Keith Andrews was an unassuming, middle-aged man with a keen eye and quiet manners. I told him everything I knew, showed him the pictures I'd taken on my phone, and asked him to investigate. "I want the facts," I said. "Full information about this woman, about her relationship with this man, about their life together. If this really is my sister-in-law and she's leading a double life, I need to know about it for sure." Keith nodded, making notes in a small notebook. "I understand the task, Mr. Blake. Give me 3 weeks and I'll give you a full report." Back home, I tried to behave as usual. Noah called a couple times talking about the job, asking how I was doing. Maybelle was on a business trip to Chicago at the time, he said. I wondered where she really was. Was she in Jacksonville with her second family? Or maybe she also has a third life that neither Noah nor this Branton man knows about. The detective's report arrived exactly 3 weeks later, and it confirmed my worst fears. Maybelle, aka Megan Hope, was indeed leading a double life. In Jacksonville, she was married to Branton Hope, owner of a small construction company. They had a daughter, Carrie, who was 14 years old. They lived in a comfortable house in the suburbs, and according to neighbors, were an ordinary, friendly family. Keith had even gotten a copy of their daughter's marriage license and birth certificate. All the documents were in the name of Megan Prout Hope. Prout was Maybelle's maiden name, or rather, the last name she had introduced herself to Noah as when they met. The detective also discovered that Maybelle Megan spent 1 to 2 weeks each month with her family in Jacksonville, the exact periods when she told Noah she was going away on business trips. She worked as an accountant for Branton's company and was an active member of the PTA at the school their daughter attended. According to Keith, Branton was apparently unaware of the existence of the other family. He believed that during the periods when Megan was absent, she was visiting her ailing mother in Miami. Megan Mabel explained to her husband's co-workers that her mother suffered from Alzheimer's disease and needed regular care. No one questioned this story, especially since she always returned to her duties at the company with renewed vigor and enthusiasm. As I studied the report, I felt not just anger growing inside me, but real rage. How could she do such a thing? How could she lie, cheat, lead a double life all these years? And for what? What made her create two families, two homes, two identities? I couldn't find answers to these questions, but I knew one thing. Noah had to know the truth. And now that I had irrefutable proof, I couldn't stay silent. The ringing of the phone snapped me out of my memories. It was Noah. "Dad, are you ready? I decided to pick you up after all. I'll be there in 20 minutes. "I'm ready," I answered, looking at the cufflinks I was still holding. "I'm waiting for you." I hung up the phone, wrapped the gift carefully, put the detective's report in my desk drawer, and went out onto the porch to meet my son. Richard's words that it was time for me to let go of the past and build a relationship with Noah echoed in my head. But how could I mend the relationship knowing what I knew? How could I look my son in the eye, smile, and pretend everything was okay when his life was built on lies? I didn't know if I had the strength to tell him the truth today, on his anniversary. I didn't know if I was doing the right thing by meddling in his life. But I knew one thing. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. For too long, I'd been a bystander. For too long, I'd let things take their course. It was time to act, even if it meant hurting the only person I cared about. Noah's car showed up at the end of the street, and I took a deep breath, preparing myself for the evening ahead. No matter what happened tonight, our lives would never be the same again. The Laurel Leaf restaurant greeted us with dim lights and soft music. Noah had chosen a separate room for his anniversary, decorated in warm colors, with round tables covered with snow-white tablecloths. On each table were small arrangements of fall flowers and candles in glass candlesticks. When we entered, several guests had already gathered. They were chatting softly, holding champagne glasses. I recognized a few of Noah's colleagues, a couple of his college friends, neighbors. All in all, I later estimated, there were about 30 people, not too many, but enough to create a real party atmosphere. Maybelle came right up to us, beaming with a smile. She was wearing an elegant dark green dress that emphasized her slender figure. She had gathered her hair into an elaborate hairstyle, leaving a few curls to fall freely on her shoulders. She looked as flawless as ever. "Hampton," she kissed me lightly on the cheek, "I'm so glad you came. Noah's been worried all day that you'd change your mind." "I wouldn't have missed my only son's anniversary," I replied, trying to keep my voice sounding casual. "Of course," she smiled even wider, but I noticed that the smile didn't affect her eyes. "Let me introduce you to our friends." The next hour passed in small talk. I talked to Noah's coworkers about work, his friends about old times, and his neighbors about life in Palm Beach Gardens. All the while, I could feel Maybelle's attentive gaze on me. She was circling the room, greeting new guests, checking the service, but every few minutes her eyes would turn to me, as if she were trying to figure out what I was thinking. Noah seemed happy and relaxed. He was laughing, accepting congratulations, hugging his friends. Looking at him, I felt a prick of conscience. Was it worth ruining his happiness, even if it was built on a lie? Did I have the right to interfere in his life in such a way? But then I remembered the pictures I'd seen, the detective's report, all those years of deception, and my resolve strengthened. Noah deserved to know the truth, no matter how painful it was. "What's on your mind, Dad?" Noah approached me, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He held one out to me. "About the past," I answered honestly. "About how fast time flies. It seems like only yesterday you were a little boy asking for a bedtime story, and today you're 50. Noah smiled, but a shadow of sadness flickered in his eyes. "You know, I often think about how little time we spent together when I was a kid. You were always so busy working, and that's my biggest mistake," I said. "I thought that by providing for you financially, I was doing my duty as a father. But I didn't realize that kids need more than that. They need attention, support, just the presence of their parents in their lives." "Hey," Noah put his hand on my shoulder. "Let's not talk about sad things today, okay? It's a holiday, and I'm really glad you're here." "I'm glad too," I replied, and it was true, despite the heaviness in my heart. Soon we were called to the table. I was seated next to Noah, and Maybelle sat on the other side of him. Across from us were Carl and Diane, Noah's best friends from his college days. They had traveled from Boston especially for the anniversary. The waiters began serving appetizers, and the conversation at the table flowed casually. Carl recalled funny stories from their college days. Diane talked about her children, who were already in college. Noah laughed, adding details to Carl's stories, asking questions about Diane's children. Maybelle was smiling, occasionally inserting remarks, but mostly silent, listening intently. I watched her, trying to see any hint that she wasn't who she said she was. But Maybelle was flawless in her role as a loving wife. She carefully adjusted Noah's tie, gently touched his arm, smiled in response to his jokes. No one who saw them together could have suspected that this woman was leading a double life. After the appetizers, it was time for toast. Carl stood up first. He raised his glass and gave a touching speech about their friendship of 30 years, how he and Noah had been through a lot together, and how happy he was to see his friend happy and successful. Everyone applauded. Noah hugged Carl, and tears glistened in both of their eyes. Then Diane stood up. Her toast was more humorous. She told some funny stories about Noah, making everyone laugh. At the end, she became more serious and said that she had always admired his kindness and honesty, his ability to be a true friend. Several other people spoke after her. Noah's colleagues, neighbors, longtime acquaintances. Everyone talked about his good qualities, how he helped them in a difficult moment, how he supported them, how he was able to find the right words of comfort. Finally, it was my turn. I rose slowly, feeling everyone's eyes on me. Maybelle tensed, though her face retained an expression of polite interest. "What can you say about your son on his 50th birthday?" I began. "You can remember what he was like as a child, inquisitive, kind, always ready to help. You can talk about his first successes and failures, how he learned to walk, talk, read. But today I want to talk about something else." I paused, looking at Noah. He looked at me with anticipation and slight trepidation, as if he didn't know what to expect from my speech. "I want to talk about honesty, about how important it is to be honest, not only with others, but with yourself. That the truth, no matter how bitter, is always better than the sweetest lie." I noticed Maybelle had gone slightly pale. Her hand, which was resting on the table, clenched into a fist. "Noah, you've always been an honest man. You were never afraid to tell the truth, even if you knew I wouldn't like it. I didn't always appreciate that quality, but now I realize how important it is, because a life built on lies will sooner or later collapse like a house of cards." My gaze slid to Maybelle. She was sitting up straight, with a frozen smile on her face, but I could see the panic in her eyes. "Some people think they can lead double lives, deceive those who trust them, and get away with it," I continued. "They create elaborate constructions out of lies, thinking that no one will ever know the truth. But the truth has a way of coming out sooner or later." The room became very quiet. Even the waiters serving drinks stopped, listening to what I was saying. Noah looked puzzled, not understanding what I was getting at. "Son, my only wish for you on your 50th birthday is that your life be free of lies and deceit, that you will always know the truth, no matter how painful it may be, because only the truth can make us truly free." I raised my glass. "To the truth." The guests raised their glasses uncertainly, not quite understanding the meaning of my toast. Noah looked confused but smiled and nodded at me. "Thanks, Dad," he said. "Although your toast was a little unusual." "Sometimes the truth is unusual," I replied, sitting back down at the table. After the toasts, the main courses were served, and the conversation at the table gradually returned to lighter topics. But the atmosphere had changed. Maybelle barely participated in the conversation, answering one-wordedly when she was called upon. Noah cast concerned glances at her a few times, but she waved it off, claiming that everything was fine. As dinner was coming to an end and the waiters began to clear their plates, Maybelle apologized and left the table. I saw her walk over to the maitre d' and talk to him about something. A few minutes later, she returned, looking more calm and confident. "The cake is coming," she announced, smiling at Noah. "Huh, I ordered your favorite, chocolate, with raspberries." "You're the best," Noah put his arm around her waist. "What would I do without you?" "I think you'd be fine," I interjected, unable to help myself. "After all, you wouldn't be the first man to be without her." Maybelle flinched as if struck by a blow. Noah frowned. "What do you mean, Daddy?" "Oh, I'm just thinking out loud," I answered. Just wondering what your life would be like if you knew the whole truth about your wife. Hampton, Maybelle's voice was quiet, but there was a warning in it. I don't think this is a good time for this kind of talk. When is the right time for the truth, Maybelle? I asked. Or maybe I should call you Megan, as you're known in Jacksonville. Her face turned so pale I was afraid she was going to faint. Noah shifted his gaze from her to me, not sure what was going on. Daddy, what are you talking about? Jacksonville who? Who's Megan? At that moment, the doors opened and waiters appeared, carrying a large chocolate cake with candles burning. The guests began clapping and singing happy birthday, creating a surreal contrast to the tense scene at our table. The cake was placed in front of Noah. 50 candles burned brightly, illuminating his confused face. Make a wish and blow out the candles, dear, Maybelle said, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Noah obediently closed his eyes, made a wish, and blew out the candles. The guests applauded. Maybelle took a knife and began cutting the cake. The first slice is for the birthday boy, she said, placing a large piece of cake on a plate and handing it to Noah. Sarkanum, thank you, dear. Noah still looked puzzled, but tried to keep the mood festive. And the second one, I assume, is for me? I asked, looking directly at Maybelle. She held her breath, then slowly put a piece of cake on a plate and held it out to me. Of course, Hampton, she said with a strained smile. You're the guest of honor. I took the plate and set it down in front of me. You know, Maybelle, I've always wondered how you manage to balance work and family, especially with your frequent business trips. Now I realize it's not easy, especially when you have two families in different cities. There was a dead silence. All eyes were on us. Noah froze before his fork reached his mouth. Daddy, what are you talking about? His voice shook with anger and bewilderment. The truth, son, I replied calmly. Si, no, the very truth I spoke in my toast. Your wife, whom you know as Maybelle Prout, is known in Jacksonville as Megan Hope. She has been married to Branton Hope for almost 15 years, and they have a 14-year-old daughter, Carrie. Maybelle stood like a statue with a cake knife in her hand. Her face was completely colorless, her eyes burning with a feverish glint. It's not true, she whispered. It's a lie. Noah, don't listen to him. He's always hated me, you know that. All those business trips, I continued, ignoring her words, were really trips to see your second family. You've organized your life perfectly, Maybelle. 2 weeks here, 2 weeks there. Branton thinks you're taking care of your sick mother in Miami, and Noah is convinced you're an indispensable professional who's constantly being sent on business trips. Brilliant organization. So shut up, Maybelle hissed. Her hands were shaking so badly that she put the knife on the table. Shut up now. Or what? I asked. What are you going to do, Maybelle? Or Megan? What should I call you? Noah stared at her, his face contorted with pain and disbelief. Is it true? He asked quietly. Tell me it's not true. Maybelle turned to him, her eyes filling with tears. Noah, Is it true? He repeated, his voice louder. She didn't answer, and that silence was more eloquent than any words. I have proof, I said, pulling photographs out of my jacket pocket. Here she is with her husband and daughter. Here's a copy of their marriage certificate. Here are the girls' school records, listing Maybelle as the mother. I spread the photos out on the table. In one of them, Maybelle was standing next to a tall man, putting his arm around the shoulders of a teenage girl. They were all smiling, looking like the perfect family. Noah took the picture with trembling hands. He stared at it for a long moment, then shifted his gaze to Maybelle. How could you? His voice was barely audible. 20 years. 20 years of lies. Maybelle stood with her head down. Tears streamed down her face, but she didn't try to wipe them away. I didn't want you to find out this way, she said finally. Not here, not now, not from him. She cast a hateful glance in my direction. You've always wanted to destroy our marriage, she told me. From the beginning, you tried to turn Noah against me. And now you're happy, aren't you? You're happy with what you've done? I didn't destroy your marriage, I answered. You did that yourself when you decided to lead a double life. I just opened my son's eyes to the truth. Dad's right, Noah's voice was as cold as ice. You ruined our marriage with your lies. All these years. I was waiting for you from business trips, missing you, worrying about you, while you were with your other family. Another husband, with a daughter I didn't even know about. Noah, please. Maybelle held out her arms to him. I can explain everything. It's not what you think. Sorm. What am I supposed to think? He was almost shouting now. That you happen to have another family? That you accidentally married another man? That you accidentally had a child and hid its existence for 20 years? The guests watched this scene in stunned amazement. No one knew what to say or do. Carl and Diane looked like they wanted to fall through the ground. I think we'd better leave, Diane whispered to her husband. But no one moved, as if they were mesmerized by the unfolding drama. You ruined everything, Maybelle turned to me. Her eyes burned with hatred. You were always so smug, so sure you were right. You never gave me a chance. From the beginning, you decided I wasn't good enough for your precious son. I just saw what others didn't, I replied. I saw that you weren't who you said you were, and time proved me right. That was the last straw. With a shout of rage, Maybelle grabbed the plate of cake and threw it in my face. Help yourself, she shouted. The cake was soft and moist. Chocolate cream and raspberry jam dripped down my face, dripping onto my suit. The guest gasped. Someone laughed but quickly fell silent, realizing the seriousness of the situation. I wiped my face slowly with a napkin, trying to stay calm. You shouldn't have done that, I said quietly. Then I turned to the guests and spoke more loudly. Let me introduce you to the real Maybelle Prout, or rather, Megan Hope, the woman who deceived my son for 20 years by leading a double life, the woman who has a husband and daughter in Jacksonville that none of you even knew about, a woman who lied to all of us with ease all these years. I pulled the rest of the photos and documents I had brought with me out of my pocket and placed them on the table. Here's the proof. A marriage certificate to Branton Hope, dated 15 years ago. Carrie Hope's birth certificate, listing Megan as the mother, photos of their family home in Jacksonville. The girls' school records, bills, tax returns, all in Megan Hope's name. The guests crowded around the table looking at the documents. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others whispered to their neighbors. Maybelle stood with her shoulders slumped, no longer trying to deny the obvious. Noah sat motionless, staring at one point. His face was as pale as chalk, and his hands, which were resting on the table, were trembling slightly. Why? He asked without raising his eyes. Just tell me, why did you do it? Maybelle sighed. All her strength seemed to have left her. I don't know, she said quietly. It just happened. I met Branton when I was on a business trip to Jacksonville. We started dating, and I fell in love. But I couldn't leave you, and I couldn't leave him. So I decided. She stopped, as if she realized how crazy what she was about to say sounded. You decided to live a double life, Noah finished for her. You decided to lie to everyone. Me, him, your daughter. I didn't lie to Carrie, Maybelle countered. She knows the truth. She knows about you. That confession seemed to hit Noah the hardest. She knows about me? He interrogated. Your daughter knows her mother is married to another man? And you made her keep that secret? Maybelle didn't answer. Noah slowly stood up. I can't. I need air. He took a few hesitant steps, then stopped suddenly. His face contorted, and before anyone could react, he fell to the floor unconscious. Chaos reigned in the restaurant. Carl and another guest who identified himself as a doctor rushed over to Noah. Maybelle froze in place, her face a look of shock and despair. The guests chattered in whispers, and some began to gather, feeling awkward in the midst of this family drama. I knelt down next to my son. His face was pale, but his breathing was even. The doctor, a young man named Edwin, quickly checked his pulse and pupils. It's just fainting from shock, he said, turning to me. He'll be all right, but he needs rest. Maybe we should take him home. I nodded, feeling different emotions struggling inside me. On the one hand, I felt satisfied that I'd finally uncovered the truth. But on the other hand, seeing my son like this was excruciating. I had caused him such pain with my revelation. But wasn't it better to know the truth, no matter how bitter it was? I'll call an ambulance, Maybelle said, taking a step toward Noah. Saku, there's no need, I cut him off. I'll drive him home myself. I think you've heard him enough. Her eyes filled with tears, but I didn't feel sorry for her. For 20 years, she'd been deceiving my son, living a double life, pretending to love him while she had another family. What right did she have to cry now? Carl and Edwin helped me lift Noah up. He started to come to his senses, his eyes slowly opening. What, what happened? He mumbled, looking around with a confused look. You passed out, I explained gently. We're taking you home. You need to rest. He met Maybelle's gaze and the memory seemed to come back to him, his face contorted in pain. I want to get out of here, he said quietly but firmly. Right now. We helped him out of the restaurant. Carl offered his car, and we put Noah in the back seat. I sat next to him, putting my hand on his shoulder in silent support. Where to? Carl asked, starting the engine. To my house, I answered. He shouldn't go back to their house tonight. Noah didn't mind. He sat staring out the window with a blank stare, his face stony. I didn't know what to say, how to comfort him. Any words seemed inappropriate, trite in the face of such betrayal. The drive to my home in Palm Beach Gardens took about 40 minutes. The entire time we drove in silence. Carl cast concerned glances in the rearview mirror a few times, but didn't dare speak either. When we arrived, Noah declined Carl's offer to stay. Thanks, man, but I need to be with my dad, he said, smiling weakly. We need to talk. Carl nodded understandingly, hugged Noah tightly, and promised to call tomorrow. I walked my son to the guest room, which was always ready for him, though he rarely used it. He sat on the edge of the bed, still in his birthday suit, and stared into the space in front of him. Would you like a drink? I offered. I have some good whiskey. Yes, he answered after a pause. I think that's what I need right now. I went into the kitchen and got a bottle of expensive whiskey I'd been saving for special occasions, and 2 glasses. When I came back into the room, Noah was sitting in the same position, as if he hadn't moved the whole time. I poured the whiskey into the glasses and handed one to him. He took a big sip, wrinkled his nose at the strength of the drink, but didn't set the glass aside. How did you know? He finally asked, not looking at me. I sat down next to him, holding my glass with both hands. Sure, cool. It was an accident, I began. Remember 2 months ago when I went to Jacksonville to visit my old friend Henry? Noah nodded. I told him about that night, about seeing Maybelle with another man, about noticing the scarf I'd given her for Christmas. I couldn't believe my eyes at first, I continued. I thought maybe it was just a woman who looked like her. But then I saw the scarf, and when she turned around, at that point I had no doubts. So what did you do? Noah poured himself another whiskey and took another sip. I followed them, I admitted. They went into the cafe, and through the window I saw him kiss her. Not like kissing an acquaintance or a relative. It was a kiss, a husband's kiss. Noah flinched at those words but didn't interrupt me. The next day I went back to that cafe. It was closed, but there was a notice on the door with a phone number for reservations. I called there and, pretending to be a friend of the couple, found out that the woman's name was Megan and the man's name was Branton, and that they celebrate every wedding anniversary at this cafe. Next month will be their 15th anniversary, the girl on the phone told me. I paused, watching my son's reaction. His face expressed nothing but deep fatigue and disappointment. After that, I hired a private investigator, I continued. Keith Andrews, recommended to me by Henry. I showed him the pictures I'd taken on my phone and asked him to investigate. I stood up, walked over to the dresser, and pulled a folder with the detective's report out of the top drawer. Noah took it with trembling hands and began to look through the contents. His face grew paler and paler as he read. I can't believe it, he whispered. All these years. She's led a double life. She has a different husband, a different name, a daughter. How could she? I don't know, son, I answered honestly. When I got that report, I was as shocked as you are now. I couldn't understand what makes a person do such a thing. Cheat on 2 husbands, lead 2 parallel lives. And this Branton, Noah looked up from the report. Does he know? Does he know that his wife is also married to me? Not according to the detective's information. She told him that, when she was away, she visited her sick mother in Miami. The mother allegedly has Alzheimer's and needs regular care. No one questioned the story. Noah chuckled bitterly. And she told me about the business trips. I never questioned it either. Even when those trips became more frequent and longer, I didn't question it. What a fool I am. You're not a fool, I countered. You trusted your wife. There was no shame in that. Noah filled his glass again. His hands were no longer shaking, but there were tears in his eyes, which he was trying desperately to hold back. "And the girl?" he asked. "Her daughter? How old is she?" 14 years old, I answered, looking at the report. "Carrie Hope. She's in 8th grade, takes ballet and plays the violin. According to the neighbors, she looks a lot like her mother, just as beautiful and smart. So Maybelle got pregnant 5 years after we were married." Noah was talking more to himself than to me. "That year, she actually started traveling more often on business trips. She said that the company was expanding, opening new branches, and she just wanted to spend more time with her other husband and her pregnancy." His voice shook. He chugged the whiskey and set the glass on the bedside table, with such force that I was afraid the glass wouldn't shatter. "I should have known," he continued. "I should have seen the signs. All those years she'd kept her distance, never let me really get to know her. And those business trips, they were always so convenient. Never on weekends, never on holidays, always at the same time of the month. How could I have been so blind?" "We see what we want to see," I said softly, "especially when it comes to the ones we love." Noah looked up at me, his eyes wide with pain and anger. "You saw," he said. "You always saw something wrong with her. I remember when you were against our marriage, how you said there was something wrong with her. I thought you were just prejudiced against her, that you thought no one was good enough for your son, and you just, saw right through her." I sighed, thinking back to the times when Noah had first introduced Maybelle and me, how I'd sensed her insincerity, how I'd tried to warn my son, and how he'd refused to listen. "I had no proof," I said, "just a gut feeling, a hunch. And frankly, I couldn't have guessed the extent of the deception myself. I thought maybe she had some secrets in her past she wanted to hide. But a double life, a second husband, a child, that's beyond what one would assume." Noah nodded in agreement. Then he stood up and paced the room, unable to stay still. "When you found out the truth, why didn't you tell me right away? Why did you wait until after my birthday?" I wondered. It was a fair question. Why did I choose to reveal the truth on the anniversary, in front of all his friends and coworkers? "I wanted to be sure," I answered after a pause. "I wanted to gather all the evidence so that you wouldn't have any doubts. And I guess part of me wanted her to be publicly exposed for what she'd done to you." I was being honest. Yes, I wanted revenge on Maybelle, wanted her to feel shame and humiliation in front of everyone who knew her as my son's virtuous wife. "I understand." Noah paused at the window, staring out into the darkness. "And I'm grateful to you for that, for opening my eyes even if it was painful." He turned toward me, and I saw that his face had changed. It was harder, more determined, as if he'd aged a few years in those few hours. "But why today?" he asked. "Why on my anniversary, in front of all these people?" "I didn't plan it," I admitted. "I was going to talk to you alone, show you the evidence, give you time to think it over. But then at the restaurant, when I saw the way she smiled, the way she accepted congratulations and compliments, the way she pretended to be the perfect wife, something inside me broke. I couldn't keep quiet anymore. It was the truth. I really hadn't planned on making a scene at the anniversary. But to see Maybelle continue her act, to see her deceive everyone around her with her fake smile and care, was beyond me. "I understand," Noah said after a long pause, "and maybe it was even better that way. Quick as ripping off a Band-Aid. If you told me in private, I might have found excuses, ways to convince myself it couldn't be true. But like this, with the proof in front of my eyes, in front of all these people, I had no choice but to accept the truth." He sat down on the bed again, calmer now, though he could still read the pain in his eyes. "What do you think Maybelle is doing now?" he asked. I shook my head. "I don't know. Maybe packing, maybe calling her other husband, thinking up another lie." "Shimri, Branton," Noah said the name bitterly. "I wonder what he's like. What is it about him that makes her want to start a family with him without breaking up with me?" "According to the detective, he owns a small construction company," I answered. "Successful, but not rich. A simple, hard-working man. Neighbors describe him as a good husband and father. He doesn't suspect anything about his wife's double life." Noah thought for a moment. "Yeah, he's a victim too," he said at last. "Just like me. And the girl. Poor child. Growing up with a mother who lives a lie, who comes in and out of her life, always with some secret, it was amazing to me that in a moment like that, Noah could think of other people affected by this situation. It spoke volumes about his kindness and compassion, qualities I've always admired in him. Maybelle said the girl knows about you, I reminded him. Though, of course, there's no telling how true that is. If it's true, it's even worse. Noah shook his head. Forcing a child to keep a secret like that, it's a form of emotional abuse. We sat in silence for a while, each of us absorbed in our own thoughts. It was already dark outside the window, and there was only a small nightlight burning in the room, casting a soft glow on the walls. What are you going to do now? I asked finally. Noah took a deep breath. I don't know. Divorce, of course. I can't stay married to a man who betrayed my trust like that. But then what then? How do you move on? Knowing that 20 years of your life was based on a lie? I didn't know what to say. How could I comfort a man who had just lost not just his beloved wife, but his faith in the past they shared? It will get easier with time, I said, realizing how trite that sounded. You're strong, Noah. You'll get through this. He smiled weakly. Thank you, Dad, for telling me the truth, even if it hurt, and for being there for me now. I felt a lump come up in my throat. Noah and I had never been particularly close. I'd missed most of his childhood, too busy with my career, and then when he'd grown up, there'd always been a wall of misunderstanding and disagreement between us. And now, in this moment of deepest pain and vulnerability, he turned to me for support. I'll always be there for you, son, I said, putting my hand on his shoulder. Always. We sat like that for a while longer, not saying a word. Then Noah yawned, and I realized how exhausted he was emotionally and physically. You need to rest, I said, standing up. The morning is wiser in the evening. He nodded, agreeing. Yeah, you're right. I'm not sure I can sleep after all this. There are sleeping pills in the bathroom if you need them, I said, and I'll be in the next room if you need anything. Thanks, Dad. He looked at me gratefully. For everything. I left the room, leaving the door slightly ajar in case Noah needed anything during the night. I stopped in the hallway, thinking about what had happened today. I had gotten what I wanted. Maybelle had been exposed, her double life exposed in front of everyone. And yet the feelings I was experiencing were mixed. Yes, there was a certain satisfaction that justice had been served, that the lies had been exposed. But to see my son's pain, his broken heart and ruined life, it didn't bring joy. I remembered Maybelle throwing the cake in my face, her rage and despair. At that moment, wiping the chocolate cream from my face, I had felt only the cold determination to reveal the whole truth. But now in the quiet of the night, I wondered, was it worth it? Was the truth better than the comfortable lie my son was living in? No, I decided. The truth is always better. Noah deserved to know who he had been living with all these years, deserved to be able to make an informed decision about his future life. And even if it hurt him now, it was the right decision in the long run. I walked into my bedroom, sat on the edge of my bed and sighed. Today had changed everything. Our lives would never be the same again. And yet, looking at the quiet light streaming in from under the door of Noah's room, I felt strangely relieved, as if the weight I'd been carrying ever since I'd learned the truth about Maybelle had finally been lifted from my shoulders. Now a new phase of our lives was beginning. Noah would be recovering from this betrayal, and I would be there, supporting him as I should have done all these years. Maybe out of this pain and destruction, we could build something new, a stronger, more honest father-son relationship. With these thoughts, I went to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. I listened to the sounds in the next room, ready to help at any moment if Noah needed support. And at some point, I realized I could hear soft sobs muffled by the pillow. My heart clenched at the sound, but I knew that Noah needed to cry out his pain now before he could begin to heal. So I sat there, listening to my son mourn the loss of his life as he knew it, and vowing to myself that from now on I would always be there for him, no matter what happened. It's been a week since the day I revealed the truth about Maybelle's double life. 7 days filled with silence and uncertainty. Noah spent the first 2 nights at my place, then returned to his house, or rather, his hotel, since he couldn't bring himself to return to the home he and Maybelle shared. We talked on the phone every day, but the conversations were short and perfunctory. Noah would say he was fine, that he was dealing with the divorce stuff, that he'd gotten a good night's sleep, had eaten, but I could hear the deep fatigue and pain in his voice. On Thursday, he called and asked to meet, not at my house, not at a restaurant, but in a small park on the outskirts of Palm Beach Gardens, where we sometimes walked when he was a kid. I just want to talk, he said, on neutral territory. I agreed, of course. And now, on a Saturday, I was sitting on a bench in that park, watching children playing on the playground. Young mothers huddled together sharing the latest news, older people strolling leisurely along the paths. Ordinary life running its course, unaware of the dramas unfolding nearby. I saw Noah entering the park from the parking lot. Even from a distance, it was noticeable how he'd changed over the week. His shoulders were slumped, his gait had lost its usual firmness, and there were deep shadows around his eyes. He was smooth-shaven, dressed in simple jeans and a shirt, but there was something unkept about him, as if he'd stopped paying attention to his appearance. "Dad," he nodded at me, sitting down next to me on the bench. "How are you, son?" I asked, though the answer was obvious. "Xiun, alive," he answered briefly, looking at the children playing. "That's the main thing, I guess." We sat in silence for a while. I didn't rush him, realizing that he needed to gather his thoughts. "I met with a lawyer," he said finally. "We're starting divorce proceedings. He says it's complicated because of, special circumstances. Mabel's double life creates legal complications. It's a paradox. Our marriage could be invalidated if the court decides that her marriage to this Branton was the first. 20 years of life, and it could all just be annulled." He said the word bitterly, as if it had a particular flavor. "Had you talked to her?" I asked cautiously. Noah sighed. "Yeah, a couple times. She calls every day, texts, begs for a meeting. I agreed to one to settle practical matters. She cried, apologized, said she loved us both, me and this Branton guy, and couldn't choose." He shook his head as if he still couldn't believe the reality of what was happening. "Can you imagine? 20 years she lived with that lie, telling me about her business trips while she was with another family. She has a kid, a dad, a girl who's 14 years old. All these years I had a stepdaughter I didn't even know existed." His voice shook, and I saw him clench his fists, trying to keep control of his emotions. "Noah," I put my hand on his shoulder, "I understand how hard this is for you, but remember, you didn't do anything wrong. You don't deserve this betrayal." He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw a mixture of pain and anger. "You know what the weirdest thing is? I can't hate her completely. Part of me still loves the Maybelle I knew, or thought I did. 20 years is no joke. We've been through so much together, or so I thought." He was silent, staring off into the distance, where the outline of the downtown buildings could be seen on the horizon. "I just don't understand," he continued after a pause. "How can you live a life like this? How can you wake up every day and know that your life is built in lies? How can you look into the eyes of the person you supposedly love and lie to them every day?" I shook my head. It was a question that had plagued me too, ever since I'd learned the truth about Maybelle. "I don't know, son. Some people are just different. They don't see the world the way we do. To them, lying isn't something unacceptable. It's just a tool, a way to get what they want." "All right. And what did she want?" Noah looked at me. "What was there about this double life that she couldn't get by just being honest?" "Maybe she liked the feeling of control," I suggested, "or the thrill of deception. Or maybe she really couldn't choose between the two of you and decided she could have it all at once. People often think they can cheat the system, life, nature, but the price always ends up being too high." Noah was silent, pondering my words. Then he took a deep breath and turned to me. "Dad, I want to thank you for opening my eyes, but at the same time," he hesitated, choosing his words, "I can't help but think about how you did it. On my anniversary in front of all my friends and coworkers. It was, brutal." His words were like a punch in the chest. I knew I deserved them, but it still hurt to hear my son rebuke me. "You're right," I admitted. "I could have chosen another moment, another place. I could have told you in private, given you time to prepare. But when I saw her there, so smug, so sure of her impunity. I just couldn't help myself. I remembered that feeling of righteous anger I'd had in the restaurant, how it had clouded my mind, made me forget tact and caution. It was revenge, I continued honestly. Not just concern for you, but a desire to punish her for all the years she'd lied to you when I'd seen something wrong with you, but couldn't figure out what it was. I wanted her to be publicly humiliated, to let everyone know who she really was. Noah listened to me without interrupting, his face impenetrable. On Mikidun. I'm not proud of it, I added, but I can't say I regret what I did. You deserve to know the truth. Yes, I did, he agreed, but not like this. Not when I was supposed to be celebrating my 50th birthday, surrounded by friends. Were you thinking about me or just your desire for revenge? The question hung in the air. I thought deeply, trying to answer honestly not only to my son, but also to myself. What was my motive at that moment? Was it concern for Noah's well-being or my own desire for revenge? Both, I finally answered. I wanted you to know the truth, to stop living a lie, but I also wanted to see her get what she deserved. I couldn't separate the two motives, they were intertwined. Noah nodded, accepting my answer. I understand, and to be honest, part of me is also glad it happened the way it did. Quickly, without the ability to deny or make excuses. If you told me in private, I might not have believed it, or given her a chance to make up another lie. But like this, he smiled weakly, so I had no choice but to accept the truth. I was relieved by his words, so he didn't blame me entirely, didn't think I was acting purely out of selfish motives. Far, but still, Noah added, it was painful, not only to learn of my wife's betrayal, but to realize that the whole world now knew of my humiliation. Colleagues, friends, neighbors, everyone is talking about it. Some call to offer condolences. Others avoid me, not knowing what to say. I feel exposed. I understood his feelings. Public humiliation is always hard, especially for someone as reserved as Noah. He'd never liked being the center of attention, preferring to keep his private life away from prying eyes. I'm sorry you're going through this, I said sincerely. If I could have done things differently. What's done is done, he interrupted me. There's no point in regretting what can't be changed. Now we have to move forward. I was surprised by his practical approach. Despite the pain and disappointment, Noah didn't let himself wallow in self-pity. It was a trait he'd inherited from his mother, the ability to accept reality as it was and look for ways to solve problems rather than dwell on them. You're right, I agreed. What do you plan to do next? First, finalize the divorce proceedings, he answered. The lawyer says it may take time because of the complexity of the situation. Then I'll sell the house, too many memories, and maybe move to another city. A fresh start. You're leaving Palm Beach Gardens? This news took me by surprise. Despite our complicated relationship, the thought of Noah being away was uncomfortable. Maybe, he shrugged. I haven't decided yet, but every corner of this place reminded me of her, of our life, which had turned out to be an illusion. I understood his desire to get away from the painful memories, but at the same time, I was afraid of losing the relationship with my son that had just begun to mend. Wherever you go, I hope we stay in touch, I said, trying to keep my voice casual. Noah looked at me in surprise. Of course, Dad, I'm not going to disappear from your life. On the contrary, He paused, searching for words. I hope we can grow closer. After everything that's happened, I've realized how important it is to have someone around who really cares about you, even if their methods are sometimes unorthodox. His words touched me to the core. All these years I had dreamed of breaking the barrier that stood between us, of having that trusting relationship with my son that I had missed out on because of my obsession with work when he was a child. And now, through such a painful ordeal, such drama, we might have a chance to start over. Dad, Noah looked me straight in the eye, help me get through this. I feel lost, like the last 20 years of my life have been an illusion. I need someone I can trust, someone who will always tell me the truth, no matter how bitter it is. I'll be there for you, I promised, always, whatever it takes, whenever it takes. The January Florida sun was lazily sinking toward the horizon, coloring the sky in delicate shades of pink and orange. I sat at a table at the Seaside Breeze restaurant, watching the seagulls soaring over the ocean and waiting for Noah. It had been 3 months since the day the truth about Maybelle's double life had exploded like a bomb, shattering my son's familiar world. During those months, Noah and I began to see each other more often. Every Saturday, he came to my house for dinner, sometimes stayed overnight, and we talked, really talked, for the first time in years, about his childhood, about my mistakes as a father, about Lydia and how we missed her, about his work, about my retirement, about books, movies, politics, everything but Maybelle. It was a topic Noah had studiously avoided, and I didn't insist, realizing the wound was still too fresh. But yesterday he called and asked to meet at a restaurant instead of at home as usual. "I have something important to discuss with you," he said. So here I sit, nervously tapping my fingers on the table, wondering what was so important that Noah decided to break our usual ritual. I saw him walking into the restaurant. He'd changed in those 3 months. He'd lost weight, gotten wiry, sharpened his features. But the main change was not in his physical appearance, but in his eyes. They had become harder, more attentive, as if he were looking at the world with a new understanding, not always pleasant. "Shrinawan, Dad," he shook my hand before sitting down across from me. "I'm sorry I'm late. The meeting with the lawyer ran late." "It's okay." I brushed it off. "I just got here." It was a lie. I'd been sitting here for half an hour, but a harmless one, the kind that greases the sharp edges of social interaction. Noah knew it, and I knew he knew it, but we both pretended to believe this little convention. The waiter came over and we ordered our drinks. Scotch for me, bourbon for Noah. When the waiter stepped away, Noah took a deep breath and looked me in the eye. "I filed for divorce," he said without preamble. "Officially. The papers were filed this morning." I nodded. It was to be expected, though part of me still doubted that Noah could finally break a 20-year bond, even after such a betrayal. "How are you feeling?" "Shama Rafwana," I asked. He hesitated, staring at the ocean outside the window. "Strange," he finally answered. On the one hand, relieved, like I'd finally let go of a heavy weight I'd been carrying around without realizing it. On the other, he was silent, searching for words. On the other hand, it's the end of 20 years of my life. 20 years that turned out to be built on lies, but still, they were my years, my life. And now I have to somehow move on, build something new when I'm already 50. The waiter brought our drinks. Noah took a sip of the bourbon. His face creased slightly at the strength of the drink. "The lawyer says the trial will be complicated because of the special circumstances," he continued. "Maybelle's double life, her second marriage. It all creates legal conundrums. But he's confident we'll win. We have too much evidence of her cheating." "What about the division of property?" I asked. "Your house, the bills." "I gave up everything," Noah answered, and I raised my eyebrows in surprise. "Don't look at me like that, Dad. It's not about nobility. It's just that I don't want anything that reminds me of her, of our life. I want a clean slate, a complete break. The house, the car, the bills. Let her take it all. I don't care." "But that's not fair," I objected. "Sarisai, you've worked all these years, invested money, built your life together, and she's been cheating on you. Why should you leave everything to her?" Noah shrugged. "Fairness has nothing to do with it. I just want to end this phase of my life as quickly as possible and move on. No unnecessary arguments, no protracted litigation. A clean break." I didn't agree with his decision, but I respected his right to choose his path. After all, it's his life, his divorce, his pain. "So where are you going to go?" I asked. "Still staying at the hotel?" "No," Noah smiled, and it was the first genuine smile I'd seen on his face all evening. "I rented an apartment near the office. It's small, but it's enough for me alone." He paused as if he wasn't sure whether to continue. "I'm thinking about moving. Not right away, but in the long run." "Ashurn, moving?" I asked, feeling my heart clench. Despite our differences, the thought of Noah moving far away was painful. "Where?" "I haven't decided yet." He sipped more bourbon. "Maybe Portland. Our company's opening a branch office there, and I've been offered the position of department head. It's a promotion, new prospects, new people. No one there knows about my history. No one would look at me with pity or curiosity. whispering behind my back about the husband who'd been cheated on for 20 years. I understood his desire to escape the past, to start fresh where no one knew of his humiliation. But Portland was so far away, on the other side of the country. We just started rebuilding our relationship, and now he was going to leave. I understand, I said, trying to hide my disappointment. It's a good opportunity for you. Noah looked at me carefully. You don't want me to leave. It wasn't a question, but a statement. I want you to be happy, I answered sincerely. And if that requires you to leave Palm Beach Gardens, then so be it. It's just, it's just that we were just getting to know each other, and I'm going to miss our Saturday night dinners. Noah smiled, softer, warmer this time. I'll miss it too, Dad, but I haven't made a final decision yet. And even if I move, it doesn't mean we'll stop talking. There are phones, video calls, and I'll be there, I promise. I nodded, feeling relieved. Maybe our relationship had become strong enough to withstand the distance. The waiter returned to take our order. We both chose steaks, rare coincidences in our tastes that always seemed like small victories in our complicated relationship. When the waiter left, Noah leaned closer, his face serious. I found out something else about Maybelle, he said quietly. Or rather, about Megan, or Martha, or whatever her real name is. I tensed. We'd never talked about Maybelle so directly since that day in the park. Something had changed if Noah had brought it up himself. What was it? I asked, leaning forward. Remember that private investigator you hired? Keith Andrews? I asked him to investigate further. I wanted to know everything. Who she really was, where she came from, why she led such a life. And he found, interesting facts. Noah paused, sipped more bourbon, gathering his thoughts. Turns out Maybelle Prout wasn't her first or middle name. Before she was Maybelle to me and Megan DeBranton, she was Martha Pierce in Chicago, Melissa Porter in Denver, and Madison Parker in Boston. 5 different names, 5 different lives. And in each of them, she'd been married or engaged. I felt a chill run down my spine. The scope of the deception was much larger than we'd originally thought. Sakshari, Keith had found her real name, Noah continued. Margaret Priestley, born in a small town in Nebraska to an ordinary family. Father a truck driver, mother a housewife. Nothing unusual, nothing that could explain why she became so. He hesitated, searching for a word. Such a calculating liar. People don't always become who they are because of their past, I said. Sometimes it's just who they are, what they choose to be. Noah nodded, agreeing. Kit thinks she has some sort of addiction to creating new identities, new lives, like she's collecting them. Every time she gets bored with one life, she creates a new one, but not by discarding the old one, but by adding it to her collection. And how long has this been going on? I asked. At least 30 years, Noah answered. Keith found her first marriage, arranged when she was 23 in Boston. She was then Madison Parker, a college student, married her professor, lived with him for 3 years, and then just disappeared. Left a note saying she needed to find herself and vanished. A year later, she showed up in Denver as Melissa Porter, a nurse. There she got engaged to a doctor, but the day before the wedding, she disappeared again. Then there was Chicago, where she became Martha Pierce, then meeting me, then Branton. He was silent, staring at his glass of bourbon, as if he could find the answers to his questions in the amber liquid. You know what the weirdest thing is? None of her husbands or fiancés filed a police report when she disappeared. It's like they just accepted it, accepted that she was just out of their lives. Except for Branton and you, I pointed out. Sharonarity, you both know the truth. Yeah, Noah grinned bitterly. I even talk to him sometimes. It's a strange fraternity of cheating husbands. He filed for divorce too, by the way, and he forbade her to see her daughter until she undergoes therapy. The girl is now living with his sister, seeing a psychologist. It's hard for her to accept that her mother isn't who she says she is. I remembered Maybelle saying that the girl knew about her double life. Another lie in an endless series of deceptions. And Maybelle herself? Where was she now? Noah shrugged his shoulders. I don't know exactly. Keith says she's still in Palm Beach Gardens, living in our, now her, house. but there are signs that she's getting ready to move. She's putting the house on the market, selling furniture, her car. I think she will soon disappear and reappear somewhere else with a new name, a new story, ready to start another life. And maybe find a new husband, I added. Maybe, Noah agreed. It would be harder for her this time, though. Keith put her information in the private investigator database. If anyone's looking for her, they'll find the truth. The waiter brought our steaks and we paused our conversation for a while, focusing on the food. The steak was perfectly cooked, juicy and flavorful, but I could barely taste it, too absorbed in thoughts of Maybelle and her many lives. You've changed, I said to Noah when we finished eating. In those 3 months, you've gotten tougher. He hesitated, like it was the first time he'd ever thought about it. I guess so, he finally agreed. Shabinarin, when you find out that the person you've lived with for 20 years was actually a fiction, a mask behind which a completely different person was hiding, it changes you. It changes you, makes you look at people and relationships differently. You become more suspicious, less trusting, and more cynical, I added. Noah smiled weakly. Maybe, but I prefer to think I've become more realistic. I don't believe in perfect relationships anymore, in unconditional love and all that romantic nonsense. People are more complicated than they appear. Everyone has secrets. Everyone has a dark side, even those who seem perfect. I remembered how Lydia had always said that there was both light and darkness in every person, and it was that balance that made us human. She always tried to see the best in people, even when they disappointed her. I wonder what she would say now about the new cynical Noah. Just don't let this experience change you completely, I said. Not all people are like Maybelle. Most are honest, though, as honest as people can be. I know, Dad, Noah put his hand on mine. You, for instance, you've always been honest with me, even when the truth was painful, especially when it was painful. His words touched me. All my life I've valued honesty above comfort, often at the expense of relationships with people, including my own son. And now he says that is the quality he values most in me. Our relationship has never been easy, Noah continued. We're too different, too stubborn, both of us. But they've always been honest. And now, after everything that's happened, I appreciate that more than ever. Xianam. Me too, son, I replied, feeling a lump come up in my throat. Me too. We ordered coffee and dessert, and the conversation turned to lighter topics. Noah's job, my home renovations, the last movie we'd both seen. But something changed between us that evening. It was as if the last wall that had stood between us had crumbled, and we could finally see each other clearly, without distortion or prejudice. By the time we left the restaurant, the sun had already set, and the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Noah stopped in the parking lot and turned to me. Thanks, Dad, he said simply. For what? I asked, not understanding. For the truth. For not letting me go on living a lie. For being there for me when everything fell apart. For never saying, I told you so, even though I had every right to. I smiled, touched by his words. You're welcome, son. That's what fathers are for. Telling the truth, even when it hurts. We hugged, briefly, man to man, but sincerely, and went to our cars. As we drove home, I thought about our conversation, about Maybelle and her many lives, about how the truth had changed Noah, making him tougher, more cynical, but also, perhaps, stronger. I thought about our journey with him, from estrangement to mutual respect and understanding through pain and betrayal. Was it worth it? This exposure, this scandal, this pain? I didn't know for sure, but as I watched Noah recover, as he grew stronger, as our relationship deepened, I was inclined to think yes. The truth, however bitter, is still better than the sweetest lie. At home, I sat in my favorite chair on the veranda, looking up at the starry sky. I remembered Lydia, her warm smile, her wisdom, her ability to see the good in people. What would she say about this whole story? Would she approve of my actions? Would she understand my motives? I didn't know. But I did know one thing. The truth freed Noah from a life of lies, gave him a chance to start over, to build something real. And at the same time, that truth had left scars that may never fully heal. He became more cynical, less trusting, more cautious in his dealings with people. That's the nature of truth. It liberates, but it doesn't always heal completely. It opens our eyes, but sometimes what we see changes the way we see the world forever. It shatters illusions, but with them, it sometimes destroys part of our ability to believe, to hope, to love unconditionally. And yet, I still believe that Noah would find his way, that he would build a new life based on truth and honesty, that he would learn to trust again, albeit more cautiously, that the scars would fade with time, leaving only the memories of the pain, but not the pain itself. And I will be there to support him, to tell him the truth when he needs it, and to be silent when silence is more healing than words. After all, this is what fatherhood is all about. Not to protect children from all the storms of life, but to teach them to swim in rough waters, to be strong, honest, real. And maybe there is some truth and beauty in this imperfect, difficult, but sincere path that we are walking together.